very revealing journey. And what I think about therapy, for me personally, is this: it's no magic, right? It's sort of this idea of taking something that I do, or a way I think, or a way that my body responds to something, and putting it on the table and looking at it, and sorting through. Like, sometimes it's like, well, where did this come from? Why does this happen? And then it's sort of, when you do that and you really analyze it, to me, it takes the power away from it. I can sort of look at something that I do. If I have an emotional reaction to something that I don't like, I can go, oh, that's just me doing this thing again, and I know why. So it doesn't make it as scary. I'm not, again, I'm traipsing into your area and using words that probably aren't right, but that's my view of the value of therapy.
Right. Well, you're digging into it with somebody who's not biased because, to be completely honest, every single one of us is biased when it comes to our stuff, right? So, like using somebody as a sounding board or saying, hey, let's analyze this together, just being able to have them there, one for support, but also as that person who says, well, there's this other piece that you didn't, bring out. Like you brought out this for us to look at, but there's also this that's like being held back and then asking questions about that to be able to it really increase how we're analyzing all these different parts of the self. Welcome to the Resilient Minds podcast, stories of grit, growth, and success, where we dive deep into the journey of successful leaders who've struggled and succeeded. Before the wins, before the titles, what was the mindset behind the leader? On this show, we focus on real stories behind the success, the struggles, the resilience, and the courage it takes to keep moving forward, even when times get tough. My goal is to provide you with stories of hope and transformation, showing that no matter the challenges, there is a way forward. On this show, we'll be meeting with highly successful leaders who've battled through obstacles, emerging stronger and wiser on the other side. This show is for anyone who wants to grow, evolve, and find the light at the end of the tunnel. Everyone's a leader, so together, we'll uncover what it truly means to evolve as leaders, and ultimately, as human beings. This is Resilient Minds. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Campbell, and I'm here with Matt Bracy. He is a business attorney. And I mean, with my history in the mental health field, I could not imagine the emotions that go into like business contracts, liability, litigation. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt. Go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, most people don't think about business law as being super emotional. It can be, and the reason why it is because, we're dealing with people who've built their business from zero, and there's very personal in my world that requires a lot of trust from the business owners for me to work with them. So as you said, I'm a business lawyer. For me, in my practice, is I'm a corporate lawyer. So that means I do contracts and forming entities and helping people buy and sell companies mostly. I also provide sort of general business advice and business legal advice to my clients. I'm a partner in a law firm called Sheep and Stone. We're 65 lawyers, full service business law firm in North Texas.
So, Matt, I have a question about, when people they can't get the emotional regulation, which, we need to be able to calm and regulate and get clarity in difficult situations. When they can't do that and you're dealing with, some kind of business aspect, what do you guys do?
Yeah. That's another thing. I'm glad you mentioned it because it's another thing people don't think about often. I think we all know intellectually that we should not operate from an overly emotional standpoint when it comes to business decisions. And I mean, I guess in your parlance, I mean unregulated. We should understand sort of what we're doing on an intellectual basis. When people make business decisions from an emotional standpoint, they tend to regret it. And the most easiest example I can give of that is sort of this rush to litigation if there's some kind of a dispute. From my perspective of practicing law for, a long time, 33 years so far. Uh, from
Lot of
from
experience.
Yeah, I started very young, but from my standpoint, you know, litigation is something that people should really do be very cautious about because the emotions wear out over time, but the bills don't, and it gets expensive, and so there's often better ways to resolve things, and so just taking that long view from my perspective and saying, okay, let's sort of remove the overly emotionality out of the equation and let's think about the hard facts and what's the best result. And the best result is seldom to sue someone. Now, having said that, sometimes it is necessary, and sometimes, as I say, sometimes a fight picks you, and you don't. But overall, it's just sort of I can provide the longer term perspective and say, like, look, this is probably not what you want because if we play this out or play it forward like a tape, then you can see that that's not going to be the best result for you. So for me in my world, removing the emotionality or the overly emotional aspects of it comes from just that perspective, the longer term perspective.
Right, because when we go into fight or flight, because there's too much emotional overwhelm, our brain actually it starts closing in on itself because our awareness starts diminishing because we're in fight or flight. We are so focused on the thing that we perceive as a threat, we aren't actually aware. So we can't be a visionary to see the results or the consequences long term. We need somebody who's not biased, who can also stay calm, right? But then as people, because we're social beings and we are emotionally driven, then it's hard to separate the two. So when you're working with somebody who needs to cut off the emotions to make the business decisions, but then tap into their emotions to connect with people, and that doesn't mean feeling your emotions big, it's just a different area of the brain. The place that connection and intuition and creativity are is the same place that emotions are. So we actually need both. So have you ever had anybody who was not able to actually tap into their emotions, that they were so analytical, so contained with their emotions that they couldn't connect with people or maybe even be vulnerable enough to discuss openly?
Oh, for sure. And it depends on, in my experience at least, it depends on personality types, right? So um, some people just have a harder time, maybe because I would describe them as being introverted or, a personality where they're more analytical and less connecting, and that can put people off. And I'll give you an example, and I'll use terms that are much more in your world, and I'm probably using them wrong, so just bear with me.
I
But
appreciate it.
I appreciate your kindness. I often see people who, and I describe them as an introvert trying to live in an extrovert world, and and what that means is that they are naturally not going to be as outgoing and as people connected. They're maybe more analytical or whatever. But for whatever reason, they are adopting this style of what they perceive to be the extroverted style.
Right.
And when I see this happen from my uneducated standpoint in this area, it looks awkward. And the awkwardness can be off-putting to people if they're not aware of what's happening or kind. Um, it's just, oh, he's acting weird or whatever, right? Well, it's not really anything. I'll use another hyper technical term. It's not anything creepy. It's it's more like just they're trying to be something that they're really not. And I think that's a huge issue for people in business is sort of identifying who you are naturally and having a style. If you need to be more of a people connector, but you're more introverted,
Right.
finding a way to do that that fits within your personality and isn't so foreign that it seems awkward. Um, I think that's a skill. Fortunately or unfortunately, I do not suffer from being an introvert. I am kind of on the other end of the spectrum. I probably need to to tone my extroverted side down. as mmany people in my life would tell you, uh, especially in the early mornings. But yeah, I know. I think that's that awkwardness that comes from just trying to be something you're not.
Right.
Uh, I see that often with business owners, and it can be off-putting if they don't have the right people around them.
Right. When you're saying that, what I hear is inauthenticity. And unfortunately, when we don't tap into the ability, which is extremely hard, but we all have it innately in us, but to balance containment versus emotions, that's balancing our brain, right?
Mm.
But when we're balanced, we can be in alignment, which lets us be authentic and fluidly go back and forth between feeling our emotions, connecting with people, being extroverted, being creative, and then containing the emotions, focusing, disciplining ourselves, and we're supposed to be able to be like that. But if we can't even focus on ourselves, like our internal world, we don't know who we are, so we don't even know when we're being inauthentic.
Yeah, and in a business context that I see a lot, that it becomes a trust problem
Yeah.
because someone senses that you're not authentic. I think it makes it harder to trust them.
Yeah.
And business is all about trust in my world. I counsel my clients a lot of times on negotiating like really high stakes contracts.
Mhm.
And if they say something to me like, I want this to be the most bulletproof, perfect contract ever, and say, look, I can draft the best contract that has the best protections for you in it.
Mhm.
But remember that there's nothing more important than the person shaking your hand on the other end.
Right.
Okay. Because it comes down to their behavior. And at the end of the day, what does a really great drafted contract get you? It gets you the right to sue somebody if they do something wrong. Well,
Right.
that goes back to my earlier comment about litigation. I mean, that's not where we want to be. And so ideally, it should be a matter of, being authentic enough to establish that trust and then knowing who you're dealing with and having, a meeting of two authentic people
Mhm.
talking for real about, hey, what can we do in this business context?
Right. And when you say that, I hear vulnerability. Like you have to be able to just be yourself. If you don't have it all together, that's okay. Be honest about that. If you have these areas of limitation or you're struggling in these areas, be honest about that. So it's like putting all your cards on the table, which a lot of people are very scared. Like we like our faces, like our masks, right? So we don't have to show people like our mess in the back, right? But the more we do that, the more we can have honest communication, which is it leads to trust and vulnerability, which are way better business connections, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. How do you balance the vulnerability part with sort of, there's a part of the trust establishment where you think, hey, I can't let this person know that I'm maybe not super competent in this one area. Um, so how do you balance that?
So let me ask you the question again to make sure that I'm understanding it. How do you balance showing all your cards? So that's actually a really good question because we don't know how much. We don't want to say, hey, overdrink, I have a porn addiction, like like all of those things, or like I have these childhood traumas and just like that's trauma dumping, right? And it's too open. And so knowing the place and the time, but also knowing the level, which this takes a lot of self-reflection, because the more we self-reflect, the more we work on ourselves and we know who we are, the more we can actually see how authentic somebody else is. It works both ways.
Mm.
So if they haven't worked on themselves, if I share all of my stuff, that is way too much. They won't understand it. They'll judge it. They'll move away from you because they don't understand that a lot of those are probably lessons that you learned, things that you had to work through, which actually makes you a better, more developed person because you've actually gone through those difficult times that you had to work on them, right?
Mm.
However, if you have all of these other issues that you've worked on, you are very comfortable disclosing your areas of limitation, and somebody else has also done the work, right? So to speak, if you've really worked on yourself, you're going to be able to show all your cards and just be completely honest, like, hey, these are the areas that I've struggled with, these are the lessons that I've learned, and this is where I'm at, and this is the stuff that I still need to work on. There's not going to be any judgment. They're not going to be avoidant of you because they're going to really understand because they have the same thing, just in different areas. We all have to evolve and develop, but not everybody's in the same place. So trying to match with the right people is the best way.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is that if the right person's receiving it, if they're sort of also being truthful and honest, then it hits differently.
Right.
Um, yeah, that makes sense to me.
What you do is extremely difficult. I would say not only the legal part of it, I'm sure that's very detail oriented, but managing people with their emotions and trying to build trust with them and get them to also build trust, to be aware of that, right? So
Yeah.
you must have done a lot of work on yourself over the years. Have you ever been in therapy or worked with coaches, anything like that?
Oh, yes. Thankfully, I have. Yes, I resisted, like many people, I suppose. I resisted therapy for a long time,
Mhm.
um, and then probably about 5 or 6 years ago, um, I reached a point where I was really concerned about myself. I was, had a hard time sleeping, and I felt like I was in this constant mode of sort of hypersensitivity and high alert all the time. Um, and I decided to go ahead and try to dig to the bottom of this and started a relationship with a counselor that continues to this day, thankfully. And even in good times, I try to make sure I maintain that relationship. If not for anything else, then for the reason that I want him to know what's happening with me all the time, so that when something bad comes up, he can put it in context.
Right.
Um, and that context is so important to me. So yes, I've been blessed by that, and it's been a very revealing journey. And what I think about therapy, for me personally, is this: it's no magic, right? It's sort of this idea of taking something that I do, or a way I think, or a way that my body responds to something, and putting it on the table and looking at it, and sorting through, like, sometimes it's like, well, where did this come from? Why does this happen? And then it's sort of, when you do that and you really analyze it, to me, it takes the power away from it.
Mm.
uh, I can sort of look at something that I do. If I have an emotional reaction to something that I don't like, I can go, oh, that's just me doing this thing again, and I know why. So it doesn't make it as scary. I'm not, again, I'm traipsing into your area and using words that probably aren't right, but that's my view of the value of therapy.
Right. Well, you're digging into it with somebody who's not biased because, to be completely honest, every single one of us is biased when it comes to our stuff. Right. So, like using somebody as a sounding board or saying, hey, let's analyze this together, just being able to have them there, one for support, but also as that person who says, well, there's this other piece that you didn't, bring out. Like you brought out this for us to look at, but there's also this that's like being held back. And then asking questions about that to be able to it really increase how we're analyzing all these different parts of the self. Right. And I don't blame a lot of people for not wanting to do that. It's a scary thing to analyze yourself and really see it from a different perspective because you question your values, you question your ethics, who you are as a person, your identity, and then there's all these wounds from our childhood that they like to come up too. But if we don't address them, analyze them, and then see them from a different perspective, and even sometimes a bigger perspective, we can't get the lesson and it still has power over us. So I
Yeah,
love that you're doing that. I see more often a lot of business owners and even very high achieving professionals wanting to work with two people, a therapist and a coach. And that's new to me. I didn't know that before, but it's happening more.
yeah, yeah. No, it's I think one of the most challenging parts about therapy, frankly, that you have to just get over by doing it is, I mean, some things are hard to say. It's hard to hear your voice say some things. And if it's a negative about you, or something about your background or your experiences or whatever, I still find that I can be prepared to talk about something in therapy, and then as I hear my voice saying it, I lose it. I get emotional because it's just hard. Um, that doesn't mean you shy away from it, right?
Right.
Maybe the opposite, right? Maybe that's what you have to lean into because that's triggering something. And it is like an onion. I mean, God forbid, there's days where I'm heading to therapy thinking, boy, I've got it all squared away today. I'm in good shape. And then if you're honest about it, you start to peel away things and go, I wonder why I do this, or I'm not happy about this reaction I have. And
Right.
you sort through where it's coming from. But I think the bottom line for me at least is it requires this humility
Mm.
uh, to admit that I do something that I'm not happy with, or I'm not proud of, or I respond this way and I don't like it. You can't start to heal until you have the humility to admit that you need to heal.
Absolutely. And I think the most humble people, and from my perspective and my experience, are the people who've really done the work. There's individuals who either haven't yet or who refuse to do the work. Honestly, that's just because the shame and the fear is so big that it's keeping them away from their own growth and their potential. But the ego is so strong, it makes us believe that that's okay. Right. So when we give in to the ego and we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel my emotions. I don't need to analyze myself. I don't need to work with anybody. They end up, hurting themselves and they're squandering their potential, right? Because you reach your potential by actively working on yourself, but they also hurt a lot of people around them. Have you ever had any experiences in your life where you had to like let go of some, whether it be personal or professional partnerships because they couldn't or wouldn't work on themselves?
Yes, and there's a selfish element to it that I had to get through, um, and just recognizing that it wasn't healthy for me to be around certain people, and I'm thinking in particular about family members,
Right.
um, and sometimes you have to just say that I don't wish anyone evil or bad, but for me, it's not healthy for me to be around this person or that person. Um, and that can be hard, especially if it's a close relationship. Um, and you sit there. There's part of you that says, I should just sort of suck it up and do it anyway.
Mhm.
But I think I try not to be selfish with stuff like that in that analysis, but I have to also be true to myself and my own well-being and go, some relationships just I have to morph it into something different maybe,
Right.
um, where I just really can't be around this person or that person. So yeah, if that happens, it's a hard decision for me at least because I'm a kind of a people person, so I like people, and um, it can be hard, but I think it's necessary for mental health. And I'll tell you, I've actually had this conversation with my kids, and so I adore my kids. I've got a 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. But I've told them both that your well-being, your personal well-being, is so important that if anybody ever affects that negatively, you need to be able to sort of alter your relationship with them, and that includes me. And that I do, and I want to have a conversation about it, but you got to take care of you. you know you've got to make sure you prioritize your own well-being.
Absolutely. And I love that you even included yourself because sometimes when we're, telling our kids certain things and then when they turn it around on us, then it's like, oh no, not me. I can control you or I can tell you what to do or I can influence you regardless of your own perspective or opinions or wants. But when you have worked on yourself so much, you do become that humble where you can say, hey, I want you to protect yourself. I want you to take care of yourself, set boundaries, speak up when you need to, and that includes me. That's a huge level of vulnerability with, different people, but humility, especially with our kids. I love that.
Yeah,
Matt, what
thank
is,
you.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying thank you for saying so. It's hard. That stuff is hard, but it's real.
It is. And, when my kids call me out too, that reminds me because I'm training them to be the kind of adult I want them to be, right? And they're still the younger two, they're 15 and 13. And so when they
Yeah.
call me out on something, then I immediately have to check myself like, okay, I'm frustrated, but why am I frustrated? Do I want control? Do I want them to just listen to me? Do I want influence? Or do I want them to be a better human being? Right? Like I have to, do that. And then when I respond to them, okay, well, thank you for letting me know that, but please do it with more respect next time. Like we can have a balance with our kids, but we can have open communication, but that's really that's what we're doing is we're developing them into adults that can survive this world, right? Which is extremely difficult. I was going
Mhm.
to ask you, what is the hardest thing that you've had to address within yourself?
Oh gosh, I lost my father when I was 6, and and that his death threw my family into quite a bit of chaos, and that was something that left a mark on me, um, that I'm still dealing with. And as my therapist says, I will never fully be free of that because it will always be kind of something that colors my life. And supporting through that and sort of trying to um, figure out, especially at such a young developmental age,
Yeah.
trying to sort through that and to become the best me I can be, despite circumstances. I would have to say that's probably it.
Yeah. When you're dealing with people in the business world, right? Like the litigation, the contracts, trying to build trust and see things from a unbiased perspective, do you ever see unresolved wounds coming up? Like, can you see them clearly, like what it is?
With other people,
Yeah, like when their stuff comes up, can you see how what they're dealing with right now is actually not about this? Like we don't know
mm,
where that came from, but the emotional response.
yeah, I would, probably not. And that's a level of development that I haven't reached yet. I like the idea, and I'm going to now explore that more. But no, I don't think I have. Um, I on this kind of stuff, I tend to still take people or what's happening at more of a face value without thinking about where that's coming from. I like what you're saying though, because it also gives a lot of grace to people,
Yeah.
right? So if someone is doing something is wrong or not the best way, maybe,
Right.
um, it allows that grace to say, well, that's coming from a point of lack of healing or some kind of harm they suffered or something like that, as opposed to being more judgy about it.
Right.
So I like where it's coming. But no, I'm not. I haven't so far been terribly great at it, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the average person doesn't really think that deep into it, and that's not our fault either, but it can be, right? And then this is one of the things that I like to advocate for, bringing it into the corporate sector or the business sector, the professional sector, whatever you want to call it. We have this separation between personal and professional, but I'm trying to merge them because I feel like if we were more compassionate and giving more grace when my boss is the control freak, right? Or my client is difficult and their emotions are, they're exhausting to me, then we can separate from that and say, hey, there's something else going on because this and this and this is what you're doing, but I'm sure your intention is not that, right? Instead of getting mad and lashing back out or getting defensive, because there's so many miscommunications because what's hidden in somebody else's past that's unresolved is definitely affecting us presently, but it's not just affecting them, it's affecting us, right? It's not fair.
Yeah, like I said, I love the grace that gives. That suits me, um, and that's something I'm going to have to start to be more aware of and think through. I appreciate that perspective.
Absolutely. Well, if you were talking to somebody right now who they they're constantly emotional when they're dealing with business decisions, because we are getting up to time, but I would really like your input on this. What would you tell them? How could they manage that while they're dealing with emotional business decisions?
Mm,
What should they
yeah.
do? Or what could they do?
Well, I mean, from my professional perspective, I can give context, and I can, like I said earlier, I can sort of play it forward for them and say, well, if we decide this, then here's where it's going to go, and here's the result, and here's the likely result, and here's what that'll look. But that's a little bit superficial. What I would like to encourage people to do is to resolve their emotional issues with someone like you. But that's hard even in a friendly context to recommend to somebody like, hey, you should go to therapy. Right? I mean, and it's really hard in a professional context. So the only thing I can do in both my professional and my personal lives is try to, in some way, to try to be an example. And so I am pretty intentional about mentioning the fact that I go to therapy with friends and professional colleagues. And a lot of people are saying this nowadays, but I'm trying to normalize it in my world. The same way you would talk about how, I had a sore throat, so I went to the doctor. It's like, I had a hard time dealing with some emotional stuff I've been dealing with, so I've been seeing a therapist, to make that as normal. I think that's a way to do that. And I also acknowledge other people when they are as open. And so I've got people I've talked to within the last week who very freely mentioned that, oh, I was seeing my therapist and I did this or did that or whatever. And I stopped and said, hey, thank you for mentioning that so freely. I think we need to be more open about that. So both me being open about it and recognizing it in others, I think is something I can do. And hopefully moves the needle a little bit with some people, just to know that this is an option and there's nothing wrong with you, like in a really super bad way if you seek that kind of help, just like there's nothing, wrong with you as a person if you have a sore throat and you go to the doctor, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So your advice to them would be to talk to somebody who is unbiased, and you're one of them, right? And then, somebody to work on the emotional barriers for them to be able to make clearer business decisions.
Yeah. And just to be able to say that, and again, it's a hard thing to tell somebody, hey, go see a therapist, but I can just personalize it. And I can say, sometimes when I'm having a hard time sorting between emotional and rational, and I don't like the way the emotional side is sort of taking over, I talk to my therapist about it. So I can't tell somebody what to do, but I can give my own examples.
That actually is, I think, more effective too, because if you have somebody who's trying to make this decision or they're, kind of getting in their own way, and you as a professional who's trying to help them, just saying like, hey, when I have difficulty, I talk to my therapist. Like you're not telling them to go see a therapist and you're not telling them that anything's wrong with them. You're sharing personal experience and you are being vulnerable, which is humble too. And people usually respond to that a whole lot quicker than, pointing fingers and you got a problem, right? Also, we learn better by modeled behavior. So the best thing that we can do for people around us is just keep doing what you're doing. So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate your time today, Matt. Thank you so much.
I have learned so much. Thank you. I appreciate the time too, Jacqueline.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining. Your time and your focus are your most valuable currencies, so thank you for giving that to us today. Our guest contact information will be in the description below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But please, if you know someone who's struggling, stop right now and send this video to them. The struggle behind growth and success is real, and they need the support to make it, because the strongest minds are the ones that healed. So don't forget, lead louder, feel deeper, and stay resilient. Until next time, this is your host, Dr. Campbell, on the Resilient Minds podcast.